resources of which we don't know, but that's what they need to say, streaming in a way. Oh, here we are. Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Welcome. And before I go any further and introduce my partner in crime, it appears half of his head, his toque, his Canadian toque, and I've got to fix that. So give me a sec.
The world wants to see Johnny's handsome face.
In that case, I'll make it even bigger. Uh, no, let's just do that. There we
Yoink.
go. Perfect. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadian Bro Show, the first iteration of the Canadian Bro Show, the OG, the original iteration of the Canadian Bro Show. For episode, believe it or not, we're shocked ourselves, episode 21.
Holy
And we
moly.
wanted to specifically talk about, before I introduce my co-host with the second most, as my other co-host, Trent Rowley, is taking the co-host with the most, so Johnny's got to play second. But Johnny and I are used to playing seconds in our life, and thirds and fourths and fifths, and that's why we're still here, because we're humble. We know what humility is. We're kind. We're generous. We're God-fearing, and we're friends. And at the end of the day, we're just happy that we have the opportunity to actually make 21 shows. It's quite
Or
remarkable.
whatever, especially with all the technical hiccups.
Yeah. So before I move any further, my name is Paul Bale. I'm the founder and host of the Canadian Bro Show, and this is all things Canadian with Pauly and Johnny. And today's episode 21, is being Canadian. Eh?
How's it going?
How's it going, eh? And my partner with the second most is Mr. John Leister, the co-host of the Canadian Bro Show. Johnny, how you doing today?
I'm fine, Pauly. How are you? How was your week since last we did this? What's new?
Well, it's been painful.
Oh yeah, you were saying some
Yeah,
information.
yeah. I'm up in Kelowna. I'm in Kelowna right now. I live in Vancouver and Kelowna, but I'm currently in Kelowna, and I'm actually a an extension of my basketball journey. I've just recently joined the Kelowna Officials of British Columbia. I am a basketball official. I am a paid basketball official. So technically, I am a professional basketball enthusiast. Once again, a
Wow.
hoop junkie. As my other show, the second iteration of the Canadian Bro Show with Trent Rowley, is all basketball from the hoop
Pauly,
junkies,
Pauly is
Pauly and Raleigh.
100% aligned with his mind's eye version of himself, which is a kind of bliss.
Yeah, it only took 59 years.
However
But
long it takes, it's worth it in the
yeah,
end.
I agree, Johnny, and thank you for that. And at the end of the day, I just need to tell everyone about the iterations. The third iteration is going to be the Canadian Bro Show, all Canadian real estate, with Pauly and guests. And I'm working on that. It's going to come. But in the meantime,
It won't be me.
if you're interested in basketball, if you're interested in basketball, we have 7 episodes
I'd have to
now
look up
up.
real estate in the dictionary. I'd have to Google it.
So as I'm trying to say, but Johnny keeps on interrupting me. If you're interested in basketball and would like to watch the second iteration, we have 7 episodes. Please check it out, and please comment, suggest, share, subscribe, like, or not, whatever you'd like to do. And today's episode, Johnny and I are back in it. Johnny's in Vancouver. Johnny, before we go any further, with the new show, episode 21, being Canadian, eh? How are things in Vancouver?
Things are fine. I uploaded 2 more plug. There you go. Shamelessly plugging his product. I uploaded 2 more
Who,
Lee
you?
Hackman. Who me?
Good.
Yep, me. I know.
Wow. Is that something
Uh,
new?
no, this is something I've been doing since 2019. Two
Oh, good
more
for you.
Lee. Thank you so much. Lee Hackman Mysteries. One is called Vigilante Time, which is about the murder of a neighborhood watch leader, and the other one is called I Die for My Country Western Music, which is about the murder of a country western star. I'm real happy with how they both turned out. I love writing. I love doing this, and it's my dream that someday a Lee Hackland private investigator now streaming on Netflix. That's in my mind's eye. That's on the horizon. It's not beyond my grasp. It's within my grasp. Or so I like to think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm your number one fan, if
Thank
not
you.
number one, top 10.
I'll
And
take it.
Johnny, for those that are interested in writing, we're going to be doing a writing novel writing, professional writers novel episode coming up with an old friend of mine, Jonathan Brown, who is represented by a literary agent and has about, I think, about 15 books.
He's the real deal, that guy.
Yeah, he is, and he's Canadian, and we like to really talk about Canadians. And I'm really hopeful that not only Jonathan is a very talented guy, he's a drummer, a musician, great athlete, super nice dude,
Mm.
and has been like many of us, has been through a lot of life experiences right now that we'll get into that interview. It's going to be happening in a week or two,
How
just
did you two hook up?
organizing logistics because he's in California, Johnny's in Vancouver, I'm in Kelowna, so we have to try to work that out. I missed that question, Johnny. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was just wondering how you
No,
guys
no,
hooked up.
that's all you do is interrupt. That's all good. We
Just
we call it in broadcast. We call it interjections.
I like to think of it as contributions. I was just wondering how you guys met.
Via basketball in high school,
Or- Right. Oh,
and they got to know me at Lord Bing, the Grey Ghosts. They got
uh,
to know me, and like every other school in Vancouver, very very quickly. After 5 years of completely destroying their entire athletic basketball department, because
wow.
force of nature. I was a basketball savant. I'm a hoop
Mm,
junkie. But
mm.
that was a long, long time ago, dude. That's 40 years ago. But one of the beautiful things about cultivating an organic garden, as an example, is I like to cultivate organic friendships, long-term friendships with a vast variety of people that I met in my life, because many people in my immediate family didn't find that particularly interesting or didn't cultivate it, and I find it really bizarre. But this is not a knock on some of the members of my family, of course. It's just how I chose to acknowledge my lifelong friends and how much I value their friendship.
Well, those feelings are
um,
reciprocated.
yeah, well, I hope so. If not, I don't do it because of that. So,
I know.
that's okay. I don't do
Just
it
for the
because
record.
I need some sort of a pat on the back. I don't at all. I do it because it makes me feel good, and hopefully those friendships feel good to them as well.
Indeed.
And in the meantime, our show today is about being Canadian, and that is one of the Canadian isms. Is that Canadians are globally known as people that are non warmongering,
Friendly.
very friendly,
Polite.
they extremely polite. But we're going to get into that as the show unfolds. And Johnny, how's work? How's Vancouver? What's going on? Anything exciting?
I mean, nothing really to report. I work security. I work in downtown Vancouver. Dealing with a lot of homeless people every day. I get my cardio. It's 3 to 4 hours of intense walking and sometimes running and heavy lifting and one crisis after another. But I love it. I mean, the shift goes by in a heartbeat, and it keeps me in shape. And I feel like I'm doing something important. I'm helping people every day. And I
You
always,
Johnny, don't
you know the old saying, give them the pickle. I always try to give. I like to think, and if I'm the only one who thinks this way, that's fine. I like to think I give 110%
you do.
every day on my job.
And people that don't know, and of course I'm biased because I'm a close friend, but Johnny is a true professional, and in any profession that you take and take care of it, if you're a professional, I admire it. And Johnny's been in the game for over 35 years, which is quite remarkable. And it's taken him down the path of enlightenment, of excitement, of health, welfare. And just recently, Johnny had an epiphany that changed his life, and he's in the best place he's ever been. I love him. I'm happy for him.
Thank
It's
you.
pretty awesome. And really, at the end of the day, Johnny, really, let's get down to it. This is the Canadian Bro Show,
Mm,
and we're Canadians.
we
So,
are.
to you, if I
Very
was to ask you our first question today, what is it? You wearing a Canadian toque and a Canadian shirt. I'm wearing
very
A
patriotic.
Vancouver Grizzlies cap, a
You are.
basketball cap, and the Vancouver Grizzlies logo, and
Looking very sporty.
Steve Nash's spirit and soul has joined me in this podcast in my little studio here in Kelowna. And so I'm surrounded by Canadians. Johnny, what
Anytime.
is it to you? What would be if somebody asked you, you went to Australia recently and people haven't been to Canada, and they said, "My God, you're Canadian? How cool is that?"
Right.
What is it about being Canadian that is important for you? The first thing comes
Okay.
off top of your tongue.
Well, just I'll try to make this succinct. I was working security in front of a bank one day, and this guy was walking into the bank, and I held the door open for him because I like to hold the door open for people.
Yeah.
And this other guy was leaving, and one guy said, "Oh no, oh no, you go ahead," and the other guy said, "Oh no, you go ahead." And I said to them, "This is what we call a Canadian standoff." And so,
Without
sorry,
guns.
yeah,
Without
yeah,
guns.
right. And it's just, sometimes our politeness is a little bit over the top, but I certainly prefer that than to live in a culture where it's not a consideration at all. So I think, I don't want to stereotype. At the end of the day, we're all individuals, but there is such a thing as culture. I would not deny that. And I think that culturally speaking, Canadians by and large, and of course, anybody can be Canadian, doesn't matter where you come from. Everybody's welcome here. As long as you're not a terrorist, everybody's welcome here. It's all about do unto others, treating people the way that we like to be treated. And of course, I feel that some of that has been ebbing over the last few years, but that might be just a perception, getting old thing. I mean, I don't know. I never hear anyone say excuse me or pardon me. I'm the only person in my daily day-to-day life that ever actually says it. So again, setting an example. But I still think that on a comparative scale, Canadians tend to go out of their way to get along with other people. We're not trying to impose our will upon other people, and so that's how I see.
So the short version of your answer is that Canadians are friendly people.
Yeah, we're nice. We're not trying to push a point of view on another person. We're just living our lives. We're like hobbits from Lord of the Rings.
Even if we did and that person got offended, we'd say, "Oh my God, I'm sorry about that.
Right.
Apologize."
Yeah, you take the
Because
high
we're
road.
friendly. That's what
You
we
you
do.
just you just I can prattle on, but you can cut me off at any point. But you just reminded me of an incident recently where I was at a Starbucks where a guy was walking towards me, and I tried to get out of his way, and he tried to get out of my way,
Oh,
and he
excuse me.
actually he actually elbowed my stomach. He actually jabbed my. This just happened quite recently.
Right.
I can't remember if I told you the story. And
No.
he walked outside, and we looked at each other, and he gave me the 1,000-yard stare. You know how guys can be sometimes. And I looked back at him, and believe it or not, and you know me pretty well, Paul, I'm a pretty peace loving man. For a half second, I actually considered stepping outside and being very non Canadian, maybe more of an American, and I say that with love, and confronting this guy, like, hey, why did you do that? No, I didn't. I took the high road, I sat down, and I opened my notebook and I started writing, and I forgot about the whole affair.
Yeah, good.
This is a Canadian attitude. It's a good
Yeah.
attitude. Take
And
the high road, unless you have absolutely no other choice. But most of the times we do.
yeah, and so people don't understand also Vancouver and Canadian. Vancouver's, it's the only city I've really known. I was born in Europe and in Cambridge in the UK, and came over as a very young man with my supposed father. He's basically a sperm donor, and my mother, and John and we've had conversations about that. So I'll just leave it at that. And all I knew was growing up in Kitts Beach. So I was spoiled silly. I didn't know it until I was 27, because I grew up in the best place in the world, and I grew up in the best country in the world. I
Yeah,
didn't know it was the best country, the best place until, like I say, I was almost 30. And then when I started playing professional basketball in Europe, first thing I did when I came back to Vancouver is I went to Kitts Beach. I went to the courts right at the middle where the Canadian flag was and kissed the courts. I was
wow.
so happy to be home that there is no better place in the world than Kitts Beach in Vancouver, in Canada, in my opinion. But this question was about you, so thank you for that. Ask me the same question.
Sure. Well, you just reminded me of that scene in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, where Kevin Costner comes back from the Middle East, and he's walking on the beach and he kisses the sand. So what is your take on what it means to be Canadian, my dear brother Pauly? Go.
Well, when I first went over to play professional basketball in Europe, I was 29, and my very first attempt at getting a professional contract without an agent was successful. And that night in celebration, my teammates, a couple of the teammates, just newly found friends and teammates, took me out. It was in Birmingham. It was with the Birmingham Bullets. Was my first contract. And if you know Birmingham, it's in the Midlands. It's not south in the UK. It's not north. It's not southwest. It's not Wales, Ireland, or Scotland. It's just the Midlands, and it's kind of like Vancouver. There's a lot of immigration. There's a lot of East Indians and Chinese and Asians, and it's really cool. It reminded me of Vancouver a lot, actually, except they got a really wacky accent. But really nice people. Had a great time, and they took me out to a pub, as you do in British culture, and they bought me a pint or two or three. And I remember having to buy my round after being bought a couple of beers. I went and bought a round for everyone that was there. And one of the bar gals behind the bar with that beautiful little Brummy accent, she goes, "Are you a Yank?" And I was like, "Excuse me? Are you a Yank?" And I'm like, "A Yank? Oh, you mean American?" No, 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 no. I'm not American. I'm Canadian.
Uh,
And the reason why she asked that is she was going to warn me that this particular pub, they didn't particularly like United States civilians,
right,
Americans at
right.
all. So because when I open my mouth, I sound like I'm a Yank, but I'm Canadian. But
Mm,
I wasn't wearing any discernible thing, and I'm in the UK.
yeah,
So of course, if I'm a basketball player, and believe me, you'd know I'm a basketball player because my teammates, I'm the shortest guy in the team. My teammates are all 6'9". So and so they think that I'm American. Well, the issue with that is you have to let them know you're Canadian so they don't glass you.
right.
Glassing in the UK is quite popular against people they don't like, and that's where they
I never
take
heard that.
they finish their pint, and then they while you're not looking, they glass you upside the head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I didn't want that, and I
No.
made sure I let everybody know I was Canadian. Right away, people went, "Oh, oh, 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 all right then. Oh, no problem. We like Canadians. Everyone likes Canadians for the most part." That's really, really. I know it doesn't sound like the shorter part of the answer, but that was the first thing that comes to my head at this point.
You just reminded me of something. When I was 10, my mom took me to Disneyland with my aunt and uncle who lived in Concord, California. And you remember how fat I used to be? I wore this tight white T-shirt every day with the
Ooh.
Canadian flag on it and Canada emblazoned on the front. And I remember a lot of people point. I felt like a rock star because people were pointing at me saying, "We love Canada." Maybe it was around the time of Argo. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
felt like a celebrity for a couple of days.
Well, Argo was the number one film in the world in 2012, and it's a great film. And you brought it up in one of our past because Johnny and I are like the Canadian version. We like to say Canadian cinema, eh? And it's Pauly and Johnny. And we're not going to mention the other popular show because we don't want any copywriting issue. We're starting our own trend.
There you go.
But the one thing is, if aside from the little basketball thing, which is a true story, I get all the time in my travels. I don't know about you, and this is where I want to segue to
Mm.
is when people say a lot of people don't know anything about Canada. They think we're like the 51st state that that fat orange crooked slime ball that will be running the greatest country in the world, the strongest country in the world in January. Recently joked with our inept prime minister, who is just completely useless, driving Canada into the ground for 9 years, and he's in Mar-a-Lago kissing that fat orange. Oh my God, I just can't imagine the horrific. Anyways, and Trump just joked, when he was drinking his no sugar Coke. Yeah, well, if you don't like it there, Trudeau, we could make it 51st date. And I'm just honestly, I just want to reach through the television like in a Cronenberg film and Videodrome and grab that man's shoulder
Oh, this
and
is why I
neck.
don't watch the news.
No, it's terrible. It's
I
just
never
it's
want to feel that way
shocking.
about
And to
anybody.
see these guys groveling over each other is just ridiculous. But the biggest question I get is the most variety of people that haven't been to Canada is how big is Canada?
Mm. Pretty
And
good.
most people know Canada is big, but they just don't know how big is big. So when you actually come up with some stats and some concise, informative information, people are just their jaws open up. They have no idea how big it is. So what I'd like to do, Johnny, is just go into a couple of really good stats, and it's concise. But really, what it comes down to is we have the answer on how big it is, and we have some interesting facts that
It's this
not
big.
many people know about it. Yeah, it's bigger than that. That could be in some in the 70s in a porn
No,
star
no
film. That
receipts
could
here
be a
from
whole different
Chester,
thing.
I was going to say.
Right. So, it's a family film. It's a family show, family film, family content, Johnny.
We'll keep it
Yeah, I have to
vague.
remind him sometimes because, anyways, and so just how big is Canada? Well, it happens to be the world's second largest country
Wow, I
after
did
our
not know that.
after our northern neighbors, and they're not friendly neighbors. That is
Wow.
Russia. Russia's the largest country in the world.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And the country stretches across 3.8 million square miles, which is ridiculous. In
Mm.
Canada, of course, we do kilometers, so I got to say them both. Um, the only place in the world that actually has the metric as opposed to, anyways, it's 9.9 million square kilometers. It's big. It's
Yeah,
bloody big.
a lot of unoccupied space.
Yeah, I mean, not yet, anyways. And I'll get there later with some more information because with the fat orange blobs joke, he's probably somewhat true. He's probably somewhat telling the truth about what he wants because you all know what he wants, which means that the UK, United Kingdom, the entire islands of the United Kingdom can fit in Canada over 40 times.
Wow, holy mackerel!
But listen, it gets better. Canada is so big that it's surrounded by three oceans. I mean, not many places in the world can say that. The Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Arctic Ocean, and its stunning coastline is 151,473 miles long. That's just incredible. The Pacific coastline is a popular route for, all the cruises up from, global cruises. Also, Canada is known for having the greatest number of lakes in the world.
Mm.
Second largest country, more lakes than any other country in the world, including Russia. 31,752 lakes. I don't know who had the job of going and counting those, but
Lake-tacular.
I'm telling you, it is very nice. And a massive 9% of Canada's surface is covered in lakes, which means that not only Canada is massive, we also have more organic, pristine water,
Mm.
oil, trees.
We are abundant with natural resources. To be
We
precise.
are the number one country in the world,
Yeah.
abundant with natural resources, and the second largest country. And our Canadian dollar is barely worth 60 cents,
Oh,
66
man.
cents on the dollar. So it's kind of frightening how
Mm.
the jokes of the South and North, we're surrounded by two hostile situations. One in the States, and they're our neighbors and friends, but unfortunately, the new regime that is getting in is going to be shockingly distasteful and unrelenting. I'll leave it at that. And that's polite. I could go into my swearing verbiage because I like to swear a lot,
Well, we
but I
should
try
go
not to.
going
And
on.
then, of course, to the north of us, we have the Russians. We don't even need to even talk any about that because we all
Yeah.
know what's going on there. But, the lakes are massive. And it says here 9% of Canada's surface is covered by lakes. More than 50% of the world's natural lakes are in Canada. That's remarkable. This is a
Mm.
big planet.
Yeah. We're
And
very
without
lucky.
its lakes, Canada would be smaller than the US. Well, in fact, Canada is not much larger than the US. I'll get there. The second largest lake in the world and the largest lake in Canada is Lake Superior, which is also on the American border. And it is 31,700 square miles, if you can imagine that. That's a
Wow.
lake in the middle of North America. It actually crosses into the US, as I mentioned. It's the largest lake that entirely is Canada, and the Great Bear Lake is the largest that is in Canada, over 12,000 square miles. Canada also, this is just one of those things because you're talking about the fat orange guy and he's already talking about tariffs with the Mexicans and Canada. Well, only because of the inept job that he did on the southern border when he was in power for 4 years. He only did 52 miles and there's 3,500. So we won't go there and I won't mention that mother.
You
But
shouldn't think about it, Paul. It just stresses
no,
you
no,
out.
it drives me insane. The hair on the back of my neck
Well,
stands up. Canada also has the world's longest undefended border, which is
oh,
really pissing off our American friends.
that sounds bad.
And so they're threatening us with tariffs because of the threat of everybody leaving America that they're going to kick out anyway. That goes into Canada. What does he care about that? As long as he gets them out, because he's gonna do an unleash a massive immigration. And then the other thing is if you look at it, how long is that border? That border is 5,525 miles long. The border between the two countries is longer than the biggest river in the world, the Nile, which is
God.
4,250. So just some of these little stats, and I'll just give you a couple more because it really wakens people. People that don't know this will be like, what? So if you
This
just
must be the
take,
most educational podcast ever.
well, I mean, it's informative. If you look at the breakdown of our show, this is what we want to talk about. We want to talk about stats. We want to talk about stuff that's relevant. And if we're talking about being Canadian, we want to talk about Canadian things. And these are important things that you know. If you're not Canadian, you want to be Canadian, you probably need to know this. And if you don't need to know it, you probably want to know it because it's kind of cool. And it's true. It's massive. So how big is Canada? Is a series of provinces. I won't get into all the provinces. I only talk about the best province in Canada, and that's British Columbia, of course.
Go BC.
Yes.
Mm.
And how big is British Columbia? If you ask that question even to my friend Johnny and any Canadians, they wouldn't be able to tell you. They'd say it's
There's a big
freaking
question mark
huge.
over my head, just like
It's
the
huge.
cartoon.
It's huge.
Mm.
British Columbia is such a vast province that it's virtually impossible to see all of its natural beauty. Okay. British Columbia is 364,800 square miles in size. Just to give you an idea, that it's absolutely unbelievable.
It's bigger than a bread box.
BC is larger than New Zealand as a country, and almost double. The UK at 93,000 square miles, and the Republic of Ireland are swallowed collectively by British Columbia by far. British Columbia is much larger than Thailand. British Columbia is not even the biggest province in Canada. It's the fifth on the list of the largest provinces, the largest being our newest province, and that's Nunavut,
Mm.
which is 808,000 square miles. Quebec, our lovely neighbors to the east. Quebec is next. Northwest Territories, then Ontario. They're all bigger.
Mm.
And it just shows you how big it is. Canada's biggest province is also larger than Germany, Spain, Ukraine, Turkey. I mean, it's
All together.
just, yeah, it's just incredible. It's massive. It is
Wow.
huge, and really at the end of the day, I'll just talk about one other thing is really cool. And a lot of people were like, "Hey, Canada, is it all like igloos
Yeah, I've
and
heard that.
and moccasins and polar bears?" Well, yeah, there's a lot of that up north, Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, all of those places. Absolutely, it's so huge, but we don't have any of that where we are. However, the a lot of people say, "Well, you've got more national parks than any other country in the world." Yeah, that's true too, because it's huge.
Yeah.
But the most interesting one, though, is called the Wood Buffalo National Park. It's the largest on the grand scale, and it says it has a herd of wood because they call it Wood Buffalo National Park, wood bison that stands around 5,000 bison, meaning that there is a higher population of wood bison in the national park than there is the entire human population of Vatican City, which is a kind of a strange stat. But at the end of the day, you're looking at huge scope, right? And a
Wow.
lot of people just don't get it.
Uh,
The other thing is Canada's biggest island, right? So you think, well, the one of the largest islands in the world or continents is Australia. The largest island in Canada is Baffin Island. It's
mm.
almost 200,000 square miles, and the fifth largest island in the world, and it's twice the size of UK, and it's also located in Nunavut. So those are just a little tidbits of information. The
Wow.
largest
Well
city
done.
in Canada is Toronto, with
Right.
3 million people.
Where I was born.
Canada has just under 40 million people entirely, and yet it's the second largest country in the world. And I believe in Moscow, there's more people in Moscow than there is almost in the entire country of Canada.
Right.
So, I mean, that was just a little slightly long intro. That's more not for us, Johnny. It's more about the people that are tuning in and going,
Sure.
what what is it like being Canadian, eh? What is it like being Canadian for you? What are other things that you find aside from being enormously polite and opening doors and helping people that are living off the streets?
Well, I mean, one I have some talking points in my notebook here, and
Please.
one thing that I want to bring up is Expo '86. 1986, we had our own World's Fair, and I really feel like it put Vancouver on the map. I was actually started my career as a blue collar security guard, working at Canada Place, the Canada Pavilion, and the Pan Pacific Hotel. While they were under construction. So looking back at the time when I was a young, sarcastic, smartass punk, sorry, I just spat. I really didn't appreciate what an honor true honor it was to be a part of that experience. I mean,
Yeah.
there are literally thousands of people from all over. Prince Charles and Princess Diana were there, and it was a really big deal, and it was on the news. And I remember there was even an Archie comic book. Archie goes to Expo '86. Like that's when you know when you've made it in life, when you're on the cover of an Archie comic
Hey,
book.
that's when you know you made it in the hospitality industry. I was working at the Hotel Meridian and French Five Diamond restaurant. I served the Queen and her husband
Wow.
personally.
God blimey.
I swear to God, and that was during Expo.
Crikey.
Expo was Expo was the best summer of my life
It was the best summer for
in
a lot of
'86.
people, I
Oh, it
think.
was incredible,
Yeah,
man.
we were the center point of the world for those
Yeah.
keynotes.
And
It was
because we're in the
Pauly, right?
hospitality industry, in the service industry, Johnny and I got free passes for the whole
Yeah,
6
that's
months.
right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I went on my days off, and just the rides and the pavilions,
Every
and
day, every night.
and it was surreal. I miss
Yeah.
it. And again, I just wish I had appreciated it more because it was an incredible honor.
That's a really
So,
good point, and thank you for bringing that up because
yeah.
honestly, if to be a real Canadian to have that experience at Expo, that was probably one of the best experiences I've had in my life.
And you mentioned earlier diversity. I want to pick up on that thread a little bit.
Sure,
One of our mutual friends was a fellow named Jasvir Sadhu, and he lived across the street from me,
Jazz.
and we grew up together. And his
Yep,
brother Robbie and his
great
parents,
soccer player.
very successful owners of many apartment buildings. I don't
Residential real estate
I don't know
commercial.
if this is something that I really learned at home or if this is something that just came with me, but I never thought of Jasvir as quote unquote different. I didn't see him as Indian or East Indian or Indo Canadian. I just saw him as a pal, guy that I liked hanging out with. And I think that's the Canadian thing too. I think that
Yeah,
we're more likely, again, compared to some other cultures, which are a little more provincial and a little more clannish, I think that we're more likely to look past skin color and religion and culture. Oh, you like this food? That's gross. We look past all that stuff and we just see people for who they genuinely are.
absolutely.
Right? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Well brought up. And just where Johnny and I we brought up, we lived in Kits. There was, which is now a stratified condo complex between where Johnny lived on. I was on third, he was on second,
Mm.
and right across the street in between us was the First Nations. At the time, we called it the
Oh,
Native Indian Community Center.
I can't say that now.
No,
I forgot
no,
all about
no.
that place.
No, there's a number of names actually. It's not just First Nations. It's not
Yeah.
just Native Indian.
We have
It's
to say
there's
indigenous now in our reports
It's
when
a
we write
long
them.
time, buddy. But back then, it was the coolest thing. I used to go there with Ryan Cadman, our friend,
I went there a
and
couple
they
times.
had a
But
boxing ring in the basement, and we'd
okay,
put on 16-ounce gloves. They had a pool table, ping
yeah,
pong. They had
yeah.
a library. They had free coffee and tea. Not that we were drinking coffee and tea back then, but we'd have the water, the lemon water they had, or orange water, whatever. And they were the nicest people. And we were
Mm.
just like three little Caucasian, little terrorists that just run around the neighborhood causing all kinds of ruckus. And but
We
to be able to,
occupied.
we didn't know at that age that
No,
we
we
were in
did.
the minority in
Yeah,
Kitsilano
yeah,
as white Caucasian kids playing, because we're surrounded by Greeks,
yeah.
First
That's right.
Nations,
That
Chinese,
was, yeah,
Asian,
I'm
East
glad you
Indian.
brought that up. That boy, oh boy, when we went to Kids High School in 1987, that was a real culture shock to me. Not that I ever
83.
83. Sorry, 79.
79 was our grade 8 year.
Right, that's right. I was amazed that there were so many Greek kids, and not that I had any prejudice or anything like that. It was just something that I wasn't aware of. And so to
No,
watch,
they had it against you.
yeah, they did, they sure did, one against many. And so I learned a lot of Greek swear words as a boy as a result of
Oh, I,
that.
I got a couple I could pull out now, but
I
we
heard
might
them a
get
lot
we might get
back
flag
in the
foot.
day. We don't want that. Yeah. So I just think Canadians, by and large, again, painting with a very broad brush. I just think we have a tendency, like Martin Luther King, we look at Junior, we look at a person at their character, and are these someone that want to hang out with? Well, you believe in God or you don't believe in God? Oh, you're Catholic or you're Muslim or you're Jewish, you're this, you're that, you're Sikh, you're Hindu, you're Muslim. We don't care about any of that
If
stuff.
you're Greek, you're what, a Roman Catholic?
I guess that would be probably the most prevalent.
No, Greek. No, it's not. It's Greek.
Orthodox.
Orthodox Greeks.
Yeah.
Greek
Yeah.
Orthodox. Whatever. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah.
just
I just
different.
think that we're more inclined to overlook a lot of that stuff. And it amazes me
Yeah.
how many people, even to this day, you
Yeah.
really get hung up. You still hear stories about, oh, we don't want you marrying this guy because he's this, or because he doesn't belong to the right religion. I mean,
Yeah.
some people just get sucked into that that
Yeah.
sort of
That being
orientation.
said, Johnny, and growing up in Kitsilano, surrounded by Greeks, how many Greek women did you date in your
None,
years?
zero.
that, that was my
Pretty,
point. That was why I asked the question.
pretty round number. How many did you date? 100?
No, I'm not allowed to tell you because if I did tell you,
You got to
um,
tell me.
all of my Greek friends would know exactly who I'm talking about.
Right.
And the smart thing about that, if you're going to date with people that dominate the culture of your high school, it's entirely important to be off grid.
Mm. Keep it on the down low.
Yeah, I was good at
Mm.
that. Yeah, but and so the and what else? Do you have anything else in your notes you want to bring up?
Sure. Well, I wanted to mention Terry Fox, the marathoner, both
Ah,
in 1980. I mean, he was probably my first real Canadian hero, and I think a lot of us felt that way. For those of you who are not aware, Terry Fox was a wonderful young guy who unfortunately was stricken with cancer.
great athlete.
Great athlete, and he decided to run across Canada to raise money for cancer research on one lake. And I just remember back in the day, all the kids at school were talking about how heroic Terry Fox was and what an inspiring a man he was, and he's someone who should never be forgotten.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
He's a Canadian hero.
yeah.
He's not just a Canadian hero, he's a hero. He's, the way he went, I've got friends, I played basketball against Terry Fox
Oh,
up at
really?
SFU.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and he was a good athlete. It wasn't just basketball, he's track and field, he loved soccer, he played tennis, he played golf. He was a very talented, really nice guy, really slight guy like me,
Right.
like skinny and slight, but really nice chap. And what he did, and really, those are excellent Canadianisms, and
Right.
that it allows me to shift into something a little bit more as important as those things are to talk about a little bit of Canadianisms, a
Okay.
little euphemisms, a little linguistic differences. And so
What's
in
it a boot?
Canada, yeah, well, in Canada we have an accent, obviously,
Hmm.
and some more than others. East Coast is different. East Coast, it's like you'd never know if you're in a pub in Wales, and Wales happened to be on the border of Ireland, and everybody had 12 pints. You'd end up in Newfoundland, and then the Newfies, and then you got the Nova Scotians, and then you got all of the French Canadians and the Maritimes, and then you got Quebec, and then you got
Hmm.
Ontario, and then as you go west, you come out here and it's like, it's no French Canadian in British Columbia. That's in Quebec and New Brunswick and maybe parts of Ontario, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Again, your comments about diversification and
Yeah.
a cultural identity that's very
Are you
uh,
can I interject just for a second?
sure, of
This
course.
popped into my head. Are you a fan of wrestling at all? Professional wrestling? Do you know who Chris Jericho is?
I know who he is. I hate
Y2J?
I hate professional wrestling
Well,
because professional, that's the biggest joke of
well,
sports.
sport entertainment.
No, I
Well,
don't like it at all.
he's from Winnipeg, and he has the quintessential Canadian accent. I remember he was interviewing John Cusack on his podcast. I used to listen to his podcast, and the first thing John Cusack asked him was, "Are you Canadian?" And Chris Jericho's like, "Yeah, because this is how Chris Jericho talks." I mean, yeah, I don't want to, I'm not belittling him. I'm saying this with love and respect, but his accent is just capital C Canadian.
Yeah, I love it. I love it when you have that, and I don't think we do because I don't know if I have an accent. I'm sure I do, and you do too.
We don't
But
know. My ex girlfriend Nicola, she told me I actually went to Australia last year,
yeah,
as you mentioned, and she said that one of the things that she found attractive to me was by my accent. But I don't think we hear our own accents. I think we just hear our voices, and they sound pretty neutral to us. I think
yeah, I think your accent was there. I think you probably should have used another technique, a
maybe.
different aspect of your personality, and that could have worked out better. But
Oh,
in
that's
the meantime, I wasn't there. I don't know. It's just a
yeah,
suggestion.
probably right.
I want to call about how Canadians talk, and we have certain slangs
Hmm.
and jargons, if you will. And this segment, we're going to call it Canadian, eh? And the first one's going to be, I'm just going to bang off a couple and Johnny can add. The first one, obviously, is part of our currency that only just recently came in to fruition as an actual currency, a Canadian currency. And it's a bit of a joke, kind of like our Canadian dollar. And it's called a loonie.
Oh yeah, that was a big
And
deal.
for those that don't know what a loonie is, that's $1 Canadian. In
Right.
America, that's 66 cents. if you with and but that's just 66 cents on the transfer, then whoever's transferring it will take their cut. So and the loony, and then of course you can double that,
The
and then you
toonie.
could have a toonie, John.
Cute. Very cute.
Johnny, a toonie, Looney Toonie, right?
Mm.
And what is Looney Toonie? Well, it's actually a cartoon series from the 60s and 70s called Looney Tunes.
Now there's a segue.
Yes, I know, and it's Canadian. I thought you'd like that.
Mm.
The next one would be, hey, could could I could you go in and get me a 2-4? I I'm underage. Shh, don't tell anything.
Right.
So
Was that a year?
two fours in Canada were 24 tin beers,
Ah.
and usually from Washington State because it was a Rainier or Coors or one of those cheap Canadian very light beers. But you could get for a 2-4, you could get like $5-6
Mm.
for a 2-4. Well,
Those are the days.
if you're Canadian, you probably like to drink beer, eh? And you probably like to drink beer where you're watching hockey because
And eat
hockey and
donuts.
beer is Canadian, eh?
We should bring up Tim Hortons. What's more Canadian than Tim
Well,
Hortons?
we're getting there. I'm going to give you an opportunity. I just want to get out a few here. And the other thing is a 2-6, a 26er.
Mm.
Oh, and this is when you got past the beer. This is when you went into the spirits. Hey, sir, could you get me a 26er of Canadian vodka, eh? I'm underage. Shh. I'll give you $5. Right? A 26er. So that was a 26er. That was another thing. The other thing we talk about, instead of saying USA or the US, we just say the States.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, we're just going down the States. I'm getting some 501s in Bremerton. I'm going to get, I'm going to get a 2-4 Rainier. And I'm not going to declare it at the border because, they don't ask for ID. You Canadian?
Right.
Yeah. Prove it. I'm Canadian, eh? Okay, go.
That'll do.
And the next one before I give Johnny an opportunity is one of my favorite is when they're motivated in Canada, and it's usually sports related. You could be in a pub just hammered. Give her when you're watching the Canucks. Give her, just give her, which is just basically go all out. And giver is spelled Giver. I love it. Giver. Which
Haven't
ones
heard
you
that
got?
one.
You got it? You got it?
No, no, not really. But you mentioned Quebec a while ago, and
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up. This is a bit of a sidebar, maybe.
No,
But
well, let's hold that. Let's hold that. We're talking about Canadian things here. Let's go through these Canadian things.
well, I mean, to quote Bob and Doug McKenzie, we don't say good morning. We say
Yeah.
good
Yeah,
day,
we can do that. Those are, yeah, that's fine.
how's it going, as opposed to how are you? I don't
Yeah.
hear that very often anymore. Truthfully, I think the Canadian speech is pretty standardized. We have a few unique isms here and there, but I think you pretty much covered the base there.
Well,
You
not really. Here's more. So, when people talk about that person's rather keen, as they might in the
Oh,
UK.
Keener, that's Canadian, I feel.
Keener.
Yeah.
Keener's Canadian. There we go. That just woke up Johnny a little bit. One of our favorite, and Johnny is the epitome of this next word. Hoser. You're a hoser. Well, people, what's a hoser? Well, he's a Canadian beer drinking, sports loving, toque wearing geek, and who eats poutine and
Oh, poutine, that's pretty well. That's more Quebecian, I feel.
well, I shouldn't have
Well,
done that. Is that in the list? Actually not in the list. Oh, it
mm.
is.
For
That's in
those
the
who don't
food.
know, I've never had poutine. It's a kind of gravy. Is
Well,
that
no,
correct?
that's the next segment. That's the food segment.
Okay.
We're right now talking about Canadian things. So the next one is, instead of wow, that is beautiful, or that is fantabulous. Oh, dude, that's a beauty, eh?
Right, right, right. Good one.
Beauty. Beauty. Come
I
on,
for-
it's classic
I
Canadian,
forgot about
right?
that one,
I
Paul.
know. And then the next one, of course, just look at Johnny's head. Under that, he does have hair, and
A
he has a
little bit.
glorious dome. But what is he wearing on that glorious dome?
The Maple
This
Leaf.
is a Johnny. What is it?
Mm, a toque. Not a
Uh,
beanie, a toque.
yeah, and you don't say a toque like it's a toque.
Toque.
It's a toque. It's
Mm.
Canadian. It's part of our identity.
It's a toque on
And if
Tom.
it's cold out, where in the winter, anywhere you are, West Coast, East Coast, North, South, whatever, you need a toque.
A
And I love
prerequisite
toques.
for going outside. for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then of course, we're lucky to have this state, our province in Canada. It used to be a state until we actually managed to get it in negotiations with our American neighbors, and that is the Yukon Territory.
Mm.
Yukon is Canada, Canadian. The next one is Mickey. For those that like to drink spirits and were too cheap to buy a little booze container and slip it into your jacket, you just buy a Mickey and throw it into the wallet section of your jacket and just drink from the Mickey. So
There you go.
people, people will say, don't take the Mickey, which is kind of UK. It's like, don't take the piss. But Mickey is also a little, a
Uh,
vestibule.
Instead of beer, we say brewski. Let's go
Yeah,
for brewski.
that's a good one. I don't have that here.
Yeah.
The next one, instead of soda pop, we just say pop,
Mm.
right? And then in winter, toboggan. Do you go get the toboggan, eh? Because you have to toboggan. When the snow comes, you got to toboggan.
And
Next
don't
one,
call him noggin.
stag. Stag, Canadian. We invented it. Hydro dam. We invented it.
Wow.
Homo milk.
Let's not go there.
I think that's slightly inappropriate
Maybe some
for a
people
family
understand.
show, but it's not that.
Do you
It's
remember? Do you remember polar packs? Remember those
yes,
with they
yes,
were kind of triangular, and you
yeah,
peel the thing off, and you
yeah.
slice them this way.
Delicious.
They're like 100% sugar.
Yeah, but
I think they're
I'd
Canadian.
pound that in one go.
Oh, what about Canadian candy bars? Remember Sweet Marie? Sweet
Well,
Marie candy
let me
bars?
just finish this.
Oh,
I'm
hungry.
almost finished.
Okay,
Double double is another word that we use in Canada. Double double is usually with coffee or could be spirit.
right. Double
Um,
cream, double sugar.
right? Double double.
It's the
That's
Tim
it.
Hortons thing. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard
of
that a lot.
course.
I do
And then
across
a
the board.
dozen of donut holes. Right?
There you go. Timbits.
Exactly.
Mm,
And then
yum,
a
yum.
carburetor. We came up with carburetor. It was invented by a Canadian. And by
Wow.
the way, carburetors are from older cars. Carburetors to this day in Vancouver and all over are being stolen because of its mineral capacities
I did
on the
not know
resale market. Oh, it's like crack.
that.
And then of
Goodness.
course the most famous, the word a with an apostrophe. A?
That pretty much sums up Canada in two letters.
Those are just
Vowel and
and then
consonant.
but the next section Johnny's going to love because he loves food and he loves to eat sometimes. I hardly ever see him eat and he never eats enough.
I do trust
So
me.
I'm worried about him all the time.
I eat more
And
than I need
so
to sleep.
in the next
Mm.
stage, Johnny, you can start us off. Being Canadian,
Okay.
means what? And so you already brought up overly polite, right?
Right.
But you
We-
also enjoy Canadian cuisine.
Sure.
So what are some of the Canadian staples that we enjoy in Canada that are standout?
Well, I mean, the food that I eat is pretty, I don't know, dark chocolate blueberries. I eat those pretty much every day. Is that a Canadian thing?
No, but
Are you?
it's really healthy.
Yeah, it cleans your blood apparently, and they're absolutely delicious. But I wanted to pick up on the Quebec thread just for a minute, and then maybe we can come back to food. I mean, as a kid, I was a candy bar fanatic. My mom used to give me a candy bar every night. And remember Milky Way? I guess that's more of an American candy bar. But there's Smarties. We have Smarties instead of M&Ms. But I remember Quebec every few years was threatening to separate from Canada. That was a big deal back in the day when we were kids. And
And
then people
every year they did it. The vast majority of everyone in the neighborhood said, "Go ahead."
Yeah, yeah, and people were talking about civil war, and I think that's one of the reasons why I don't watch the news anymore. Because I remember when I was a kid, that really scared me. Everyone's like, oh, Canada, because Canada's going to break up, and all those people that are living in Quebec that want to live in Canada, they'll want to leave, and they'll build a wall. They're going to build a wall around Quebec, like the Berlin Wall, which actually has given me an idea for a future novel. I think I might actually do that. I'm going to call it the Canadian Civil War. That's on the front burner. That'll be a standalone. That won't be a Lee Hacklin. That'll be a separate thing. I
No,
do have
I
some.
love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Look, just keep on
Okay.
writing, and
Yeah.
we got to get you. Once we do the episode with Jonathan Brown, we got to find a way to get you an agent, and at least get your somebody to read your stuff that
Thank you.
is interested in new talent, right?
Terrific. I'm
So,
excited.
anyways, Canadian cuisine, Johnny.
I think I really can't think of anything. I mean,
Okay, well, I've got a list here. So,
okay.
obviously, the most important of Canadian cuisine, I think, in terms of the most money that a Canadian product and the consumer would pay for is organic maple syrup,
Oh, there you go.
Canadian maple
That's
syrup.
pretty Canadian. Yes, yes. Oh,
Oh my god.
salmon. Salmon, right?
Well, I mean, let's just talk about
Yeah,
one at a time, shall we?
sure.
Maple syrup. Every single in Gastown in Vancouver, every single tourist shop has real maple syrup, and the vast majority of them it's corn syrup and fructose and just crap.
Yuck.
But maple syrup is the number one thing, and I think it's the best thing
Mm,
in Canada. Myself personally, it's healthy. It has a remarkable flavor. It goes good in coffee. You can make cakes from it.
mm,
It's incredible. It comes from the earth. It's organic, and you don't have any of that fructose and corn syrup and shit. It's just pure, unadulterated
mm.
Canadian love.
No additives.
No additives, and of course, donut
Mm.
holes. You brought that up with Timmy's.
Yeah, I see those all the time.
Right? And people are addicted to them and they just sit there and just go pop them in,
When I
and
weighed
they'll
235 pounds, they were a staple. It's a wonder I'm
yeah.
still alive. It's a wonder
Well,
if
no,
Febreze
Johnny would have that as an appetizer and then have a bucket of KFC
pretty
and
much,
then eat 2 bags of chips.
including the bucket. The one I didn't kick the bucket.
I just got a visual of you chewing on the bucket. That's like
Snuffleupagus.
that's hilarious. And
Mm.
then of course we can't talk about Canadian food without mentioning poutine or
Oh,
poutine,
there
but
you
it's
go.
actually poutine.
Mm,
And I love it. I love poutine. And Urban Fare in Vancouver and in Kelowna
mm.
on happy hours from 3 to 5, they have $6 plate of poutine, and it's the best value in the world.
Wow.
And it's absolutely delicious. For those that don't know, it's thick cut French fries, cheese curd, and hot, delicious, somewhat salty gravy. And the gravy melts the curd into the chips, and you just have a comatose of salt and
That's
sugar and
that's
carbohydrates.
that's to book the surgery in advance, right?
Yeah, it's not what you eat often, but it's delicious.
Oh, that's all
In
things moderate.
Canada, I grew up. I love potato chips. I grew up, and they're one of the worst foods you could possibly. But tell
Mm,
that to an 8-year-old kid,
yeah.
or an 18-year-old kid, or even a 28-year-old kid, or a 58-year-old adult. They're addictive. And in Canada, people love ketchup chips. I think they're the
Yeah.
worst. Dill
You
pickle.
yeah. You mentioned on another podcast Rosie's Bakery in Kitsilano by Kip's
Yes.
Beach. They
Yeah.
used to make these butter tarts that
Yeah.
were just to die for,
Oh my God.
right? Oh
They
my
the
god.
ones with the cream. Well, they had the butter tarts, but
They were
did you
they were
remember?
absolutely they had icing on top and they're
Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
Oh my
And
God.
then
And then they had the Elsie's custard
mm,
pastry, and it
yeah,
had custard and the warm custard. Oh my God, Johnny, you
yeah.
just brought back. And then back when I used to bartend in the hospitality industry, Bloody Marys,
Mm,
Canadian drink, and I'm not a big cocktail guy,
no, me too.
but I do like I can handle vodka because vodka you can blend very well with so many other flavors, and a really spicy Bloody Mary, especially if you went out the night before and you've had far too many cocktails like Johnny and I do once a year, for his
Wish we
birthday and
could.
my birthday. It's coming up, Johnny. Less
Well,
than
yeah,
a
yeah, I'd like to do that once a month
it's
actually.
well, we're gonna do it the 2 weeks I'm up for Christmas vacation very shortly,
I'm excited. I'm excited.
and dime on you. So bring some money because we're gonna spend it a lot.
Absolutely.
And then so Bloody Marys are awesome.
Up on the
And
lottery
then
ticket.
in Canada, a lot of people don't Nanaimo bars
Oh
where
yeah, no, that's as Canadian as you
oh
get.
my god, West
That's
Coast Canadian, and
yeah,
and they are fantastic. It's like our version of a brownie, but not.
yeah.
It's just more diverse. And they're
More layered, right?
sorry, yeah, oh
More
definitely.
layered. Yeah,
And then California rules when sushi thing happened in Vancouver in the 70s. California roll became it captured everyone's imagination because
yeah.
back then it was real crab until it was fake crab. But the California roll really just captured everybody's imagination because a lot of people didn't like sushi, didn't know what it was, but they liked California rolls.
Mm.
And it was just one of those things. And yeah, so that would be some of the ones that I have. The last thing I want to mention is that I don't know about you, Johnny, when if you were ever broke and you couldn't afford a bucket of KFC and a case of beer
Always everybody
and
gets the back of
14 bags of chips
uh
and going to Subway and whatever.
a
Me,
pound of M&Ms.
I was a broke dude. I've lived in camper vans 3 different times. I was a van lifer before van lifer became popular on YouTube. And because just the idea of wasting money on rent, why not get a camper van and just go to the beach and have a barbecue or work out on the basketball courts, and then go to work, and then use the gym for the showers or the beach showers or whatever. The one thing I used to love to eat was a craft dinner. I used to call it craft dinner 6 ways.
Macaroni and
KFC.
cheese.
So craft dinner, the boxes, and because you get them cheap and they're easy to put together, right?
Yeah.
I'd do one with hamburger, just
Mm,
on its own,
mm. That sounds good.
and sometimes I would add a hamburger helper just to give it a little extra texture. Then I do it with wieners, like hot dogs. So I do KFC with wieners. Then I do KFC with just extra cheese. So they have the little packet of cheese. Well, I just grade or open one of those packets of cheese and dump a bunch more cheese on. The other is tuna, can of
Mm,
tuna with KFC, and my last would be sausage. And if I wanted to do a sauce, I'd do a can of Hunt's tomato sauce.
there you go.
And that was very Canadian. When I left SFU in 1988 with $64 in my pocket, the last week I lived at that house on East Broadway that Jay Triano owned, who was the assistant coach at that time. He's in the NBA. He's the associate head coach of Sacramento Kings, one of my mentors. He called me up. He goes, "You're leaving?" I said, "Yeah, I gotta go, dude. I withdrew yesterday, and I'm gone." He goes, "Where are you going?" He goes, "I don't know. I'm going to live my. I had a 1971 Volkswagen Westphalia, and I went to Kids Beach with $64 in my pocket. And the last week I lived in that house, I ate craft dinner 6 ways. You know what I'm saying? When you're
I got a
broke,
craving for that stuff now. I used to eat that. Used to eat that stuff all the time,
it's
and it's
so
and no one
good once in
around
a
me.
while. I have to
Yeah,
admit, it's a guilty pleasure, right?
it's total garbage, but is stunningly delicious.
And then what other things do you associate with being Canadian, like culture wise,
Um,
pop
I
culture?
mean, I think as far as pop culture goes, well, in the 1980s, there was a huge boom in the film and TV industry in BC, especially with the tax breaks. And so we had all these Stephen J. Cannell shows like Wise Guy and 21 Jump Street. I was actually acting back then, taking acting classes.
And I was on those shows as an
Yeah.
extra and sometimes paid actor.
Right. And
True.
yeah, and so of course it gave a lot of work to actors like you and I back in the day, and
Yeah.
other crew members.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to wrap this up by saying I'm really proud to be Canadian. I consider myself blessed to be Canadian. There are many, I don't want to offend anybody, but there are places around the world that quite frankly are a lot worse. Lousy economies, civil war every other day, religious wars and political wars and strife and tribalism and butcheries, and we don't have that in Canada on a comparative scale. I think Canada is probably the most peaceful nation in the world, in the broadest context. And I thank God every day that I was born here. And that's really all I have to say. God bless Canada. I love it.
Beautiful. I mean, it's almost feel like we should end the show on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
if you'd like to, I
appreciate
think we will.
it.
Because I just wanted to give that a go, and time is money.
It is.
And this show, we're very proud to do this show, but we do it on a budget. My limited resources, Johnny's time and expertise, and we don't do scripts. We when we start recording, we're live
And
in
they,
this show, and we've done over 30 videos like this. Not many people are doing that in YouTube because they're cutting it up, they're editing, they're trying to make it look sweet. Johnny and I, this is the real deal.
mm,
And we're not winging it. We just we have really good chemistry,
you just
synergy.
have preparation.
We have preparation, and we do talk. And the beautiful thing about this, the resource that I use for this web based film, is that it allows Johnny and I, in our current situation, based on Johnny's time, an opportunity to really chat for 5 minutes before the show and sort of get clarification, and then we can direct the show where we're both on the same page. But in the meantime, we just wanted to say thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank
On behalf of Johnny and Pauly, this is the Canadian Bro Show, the first iteration, all things Canadian. This particular episode is number 21.
you.
And because it's all things Canadian, this show is about Canada. It's about being Canadian. It's
Speaking of Canada, look at what I
being
picked up at the library yesterday.
being
Captain
as
Canuck.
as as I'm trying to finish, try, trying to finish, you know, um, it's
I do
incredible.
have a pun. I do have a pun for you,
I
though.
know I haven't finished, dude.
Can't wait.
Anyways, thank you very much for joining us. Johnny apparently has something more important to say.
Oh, um, I had dinner last night at a restaurant called Karma. They serve just desserts.
And he interrupted me with that crap. Holy smokes, man! I'm telling you,
Comedy
Johnny,
gold.
Johnny, you got to write your own, dude. If you're a writer, you got to prove that you can write better crap than that, right? Come on, man.
That gets me a lot of laughs at work.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are cheap laughs, bro. I'm telling you.
I'll take them over none at all.
And what book are you reading right now, Johnny?
Oh, I'm glad you asked me that question, Pauly. I am reading the latest Tom Clancy thriller. Mr. Clancy passed away a few years ago, one of my favorite writers. This is
Yeah.
called Defense Protocol. It's about the Chinese planning to invade and annex Taiwan, and how America responds. Again, once again, the world is on the brink of World War III. And Katie Ryan, who is the daughter of Jack Ryan, who is still president. He's been president like since 1990. I don't know how that works exactly. It's another universe, right?
No, it's like Russia, where the guy's president for like 27 years.
Yeah, it's an alternate reality, but I'm about halfway through this book, and I'm really loving it. I love these political thrillers.
Yeah,
I'm just
I love him too. I love him too, and I'm not surprised you pulled that up. This one was given to me by two of our old friends, Danny and Eddie Romagnoli,
oh, of course.
and they found it in them to send this to me. For those that don't know, or I don't really mention that much because I haven't done the third iteration of the Canadian Bro Show, which is going to be all Canadian real estate with Pauly and guests. I think upon watching the 30 episodes that we've produced so far, Eddie and Danny put their money together and bought this for me at Amazon and had it sent to me. And it's called The Full Fee Agent: How to Stock the Odds in Your Favor in the Real Estate Professional. I think they were concerned that I was slipping away from the real estate game
Hmm,
and focusing perhaps too much time on the Canadian Bro Show. And they might be right.
hmm.
But I'm going to bang this out. I need about 3 or 4 hours of just turn the phone off, don't answer the door, don't turn on the TV, and just read. Just
You
get
could write
into
your
it.
own book on real estate. It'd be awesome.
No,
Not
I don't think so. I
yeah.
think there's I think a basketball screenplay is more in order. Being a professional basketball player in Europe is sort of the direction I'd be leaning at. But Johnny, thanks you again. Let's wrap this up.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for joining us. Episode 21, Being Canadian, eh? Subscribe, like, share, comments, anything that you feel comfortable with. Notification bell, share, I mean, whatever. For
Thank
future
you so much for
episodes,
watching.
yeah, we're here. We're here. We just any participation would be welcome. We are going to sign off, and thanks again for joining us. Take
Thank you.
care.
We love you. Take care.
We'll see you
Peace.
next time.
Bye.
Bye.